This is Alan Garrett, and once again, we have Andrew Sampsel, the author of a series of novels, Castle Reef Bloodlines, and Castle Reef Legacy, back online with us. And last time talked about your upbringing and your history, a little bit about your travels and living in different parts of the nation, and how you initially got started as an author by using the Green Book. This time, we're specifically going to look at Castle Reef. That is the first of your 3 novels. And the one thing I wanted to ask you about, I noticed right on the front cover, you have a quote from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It says, "There is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact." So tell us, what made you pick that?
Well, I've always been a fan of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's work, Sherlock Holmes. You know, those short stories, the movies and things are just always kind of fun. While I got this idea, I didn't initially get the idea from that, but as this idea grew, as I began writing, I kind of needed an element or a tagline or some kind of undercurrent idea going through the story to kind of describe what the story really is at the same time. So it kind of works as interjected in a character in the story, because the character ends up being a Sherlock Holmes fan. Those quotes kind of describe the story. So it's like someone saying the quote, and I don't want to give it the story. I don't want to, get into the weeds and start telling every little bit about it. But it's like one of those things that you're letting the reader know, hey, there's more to this story than what you just see. There are a lot of Easter eggs in this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote it with the intent that, hey, this is timeless. You can read this 10, 15, 100 years from now if we're still here. But at the same time, I didn't want to date it. There are some elements you can kind of figure out the time and the date and stuff like that. But that's why I used that, because it was something to show the reader, hey, there's more in this than what meets the eye. I
think it's what I loved about reading all 3 of the novels. And by the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Andrew Sampsel. What I've noticed in all of the novels is your character development, which is really amazing. And these characters grow. They start here. They grow at the end of the first novel. Then here comes Bloodlines. They grow even more. And then finally with Legacy. How did you develop the characters initially? How did you know about character development?
Going through life. I know there's a lot of authors. They get degrees, they go to school for writing, and they have all the technical things. Sometimes, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying you see a lot of workshops on characters and things like that. And they're young authors. They work really hard at developing characters and stuff. Well, that stuff kind of comes naturally to me because of all the situations I've been in. And I know knowing people, growing up with people, going to school with people, working with people, and just going through life, you remember these. I just have a steel trap of remembering certain people, and I kind of file them in the back of my head, and I'm like, that'll be a good character someday for a story. But it's mainly these people that are in your life. And in the book, you have your protagonist and your antagonist, and it's not, there's a one protagonist that's kind of central, Julie Carrig, and then the antagonist, which would be Courtney Alexander. But there's more to that. It's like in life, there's not just one protagonist. In Julie's case, it's her family, her grandmother, her relationship with Trent. Then her dad was, and it's kind of there. And it's kind of, I grouped them. And then with the antagonist, it's this undercurrent of, it's good versus evil. There's just, not one person that is there. It's the system. I've always thought behind the scenes, there's always stuff that appealed to me that it's, things aren't what they seem.
Yes.
You could be thinking someone's a villain and all of a sudden it turns, or you can think someone's a hero and they're not perfect. They have faults. And that's just life. You see that. You see it in your own life. It's just I'm not perfect. To make a cookie cutter story, I don't think I could do that.
I was going to ask you if you drew some of your real life experience with specific people. This seems like, having read all three of the novels, it seems like even after having read Legacy, and I'm not going to get to that too much right now, I feel like there's more story to tell. Is that something that you're keeping in the back of your mind, or are you moving on from here?
There's more to tell. There's so many directions you can go because of those characters. The first novel was to get it started, get it off the ground, and kind of get an overview of, hey, this is a town. These are the people in the town. What's going on in the town? Why is the town experiencing this phenomena? What is behind all this? And what are these people doing? What's in their lives, And then moving into the bloodlines, it's more the meat and potatoes. It's kind of more of the explanation of certain things. And then, of course, the third one is, it's not tied up all in a nice little bow and they lived happily ever after. I don't think that's life, but it resolves. There's a resolution of like the main conflict and story. But yes, you can continue. Through all this, I tried to show there's a lot of life lessons. What you do while you're doing it never seems to work out, and this, the way you think it's going to work out.
Right.
And that's kind of what I kind of wanted to let the reader experience. And there's a redemption message in it all through it, but I didn't want to ram that down the reader's throat. I kind of wanted to let them experience what these characters are going through. It's kind of funny. There's stuff that I went through or going through, and some of these characters are combinations of people I know and love that they become one character, but then there's others that's who they are. You're in the mix, so you know who you are.
Your books are all very faith-based, and it's not like you said you're ramming your faith down anybody's throats, but it's really good. I really can recommend it because it's good for teens, it's good for 20s, it's good for 60-somethings that I know of. And my wife even was like, she's like, you're reading a book? And I was like, yes. And she's like, really? And then come Bloodlines, she's like, you're reading a second book. It's really good. It is a lot of fun to read, and I do recommend it. You're very clean. All right. I mean, there's a lot of scary moments. There's a lot of terrifying moments, but none of it is, in today's culture, there's a lot of filth out there. This is not. You could be a 14-year-old and read this, and if I were a parent, I wouldn't be worried about it.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose. Obviously, I've known people, other authors, people I have known, they wrestle with, do I put the swear words in and stuff? I just think even in movies, I just don't think it's necessary.
Right.
And people, well, it's got to be realistic. Well, you can be realistic, and you get away with more writing because you can say, he cussed or he said some expletives and, or whatever. And the reader can kind of guess what that would be. You don't have to, drag a reader through the mud, because I've been at bookstores and I go, man, this looks like a great book. And you pick it up and it's like every page you turn, there's something there that's like, why are they putting in that?
Right.
Is it for realism or shock value, or because what happens is you narrow your audience, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have everybody take this journey. I wrote it like a movie, so they just have fun, but it's intense. It's a thriller. It's suspenseful. It's romantic. It's, there's a lot of things in there.
There's a lot of real life in there. A lot of real life in there, and it is, like you said, mixed in there with some great science fiction and mystery. And we're talking to Andrew Sampsel, the author of Castle Reef, the novel. That's the first in the series. It's a great series of books. I highly recommend it for all ages. Castle Reef Bloodlines, Castle Reef Legacy. But start with the novel Castle Reef. That's the first in the series of 3. Also, do you have your own website?
Yes. It is andrewbsampsel.com. The basics are there.
Castle Reef, a novel. Next time, we'll get more into Castle Reef Bloodlines and Legacy as we wrap up this series of interviews. Thanks for listening. I'm Alan Garrett. The Castle Reef Trilogy is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart Online, Books A Million, Audiobook, Spotify, and more.